Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Aisha Subarkash. For several decades, the US and Russia had one area of cooperation that withstood political differences and periods of open hostility. But after Russia launched its attack on Ukraine in late February, its longtime space partners sided with Kiev, leveling a host of sanctions against Moscow. In response, Russia scaled back its space activities with the US and Europe and recently threatened to end its participation on the International Space Station. The head of Russia's space agency, Dmitry Rogozin, said that restoring cooperation on the ISS and other projects wouldn't happen until all sanctions against Moscow were lifted. Since the beginning of its construction, Russian Soyuz rockets have been crucial in ferrying up equipment, supplies, and astronauts to the ISS. But that long-time partnership was thrown into disarray over the conflict in Ukraine. Russia's global space partners are trying to force Moscow to end its attack with severe sanctions. So how will this all unfold, and could Russia turn to China to keep its space program afloat? And to discuss how the Ukraine conflict could impact global space cooperation, I'm joined now from Boston by Subrata Ghoshroy. He's a research affiliate at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And from Cape Canaveral, Florida, Charles Boyer. He is a scientist, engineer, and writer. A warm welcome to you both. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. Subrata, Russia's attack on Ukraine has dramatically shifted the world's geopolitical landscape, and it has brought uncertainties to the global economy. Is space next?
I'm afraid that this is actually in the first time, in my view, of the space history that started in 1957, that we have a total disconnect between the two major space powers in the world. Throughout the Cold War and all kinds of intervening wars in Vietnam and Korea and Iraq, Iran, etc., all these wars, we did not lose that connection. It is very similar. I work on nuclear weapons quite a bit. It's quite similar to the situation with the nuclear weapons when Soviet Union and then Russia continued dialogue with the US, despite the political situation being very difficult at times. So I am very worried indeed.
So, Charles, are you worried, and would you agree with Subrata, as the post-Cold War era of cooperation between Russia and the US nearing an end, or it was already in motion before the start of this Ukraine crisis?
Well, right now, the operations on the International Space Station seem to be continuing as normal. In fact, yesterday, the Russians did some steps to add scientific experiments to their modules. However, I think that in the future, projects between the US and Russia probably will not happen. First of all, because there's a shift from Russia to China to cooperate in lunar excursions, etc. And secondly, quite frankly, the Russians just don't have the money to do large-scale projects right now.
So you believe that China could be the alternative partner for Russia in terms of sharing resources and launching joint technology missions?
I think so. First of all, let's remember that the Russians sold the Chinese the technology for the space capsule that China took the basic design and expanded it, and they're using it today. They have announced that they want to do some lunar explorations together, and it would almost be a natural as China and Russia are part of the BRICS nations.
So, Subrata, Russian space chief Rogozin warned that the continued sanctions on Russia could disrupt their work and lead the station to fall down to earth, into the sea, or onto land. Are those warnings credible?
Well, I think I agree with Dr. Boyer's statements about the collaboration that is continuing on the International Space Station. And I still think, despite the Rogozin's statements and Russian pullback at a launch site in Guyana, that I think we will continue to see not a disastrous end to the space station, but that it will continue through 2030. I am very actually hopeful last night, and I tweeted about this, and that is the announcement by Vice President Kamala Harris in California that U.S. is not going to test any anti-satellite weapons in space. And that is a fantastic step that I think Russia and China and other spacefaring nations should embrace, that this anti-satellite test ban could be a tremendous weapon for future space cooperation between all countries, not just Russia and the US.
Mm-hmm. So, Charles, if Russia pulled out of the international space program, could European, Japanese, and Canadian space agencies operate the station until it's decommissioned in 2031, or is it worth the effort?
Well, yes, it's worth the effort. I think that, yes, we could continue to operate the International Space Station. There would be a technical problem in that the Russians are currently providing orbital reboost. The space station, while there's not very much atmosphere up there, it does have drag and it slows down and its orbit starts to fall. The Russians have been providing orbital reboost for that to prevent, the decay of the orbit. Mm-hmm. And the Americans, the Canadians, the Japanese, et cetera, the other partners in the ISS would have to provide that capability. We've already heard Elon Musk say that the possibility of SpaceX providing that is there, but I don't think that there's any movement to do that because, as I said earlier, cooperation between the Russians and the Americans on the ISS have continued.
So, Subrata, how reliant is the ISS on Moscow for its operations? In terms of critical aspects of space stations, propulsion, control systems, its power generation, and other aspects?
Well, as Dr. Boyer said, that it provides the necessary boost for the adjustment for the decay because of the drag. And also so many, until SpaceX rockets becoming somewhat available, we have been using Soyuz since 2011 retirement of the space shuttle, that we are totally dependent on them. And we are also dependent on Russia and also partly Ukraine for the rocket engines that do a lot of these missions. So it's not going to be so easy. I mean, SpaceX is just coming online, and that the risks necessary, associated with such new endeavors on critical human spaceflight, I think are very difficult to solve overnight.
So, Charles, what's the significance of the European Space Agency's decision to hold cooperation on a lunar mission with Russia, and what space projects will be jeopardized because of the Ukraine conflict?
Well, they're losing a valuable partner, and that's unfortunate because of the conflict. And they had planned to do a Martian rover that I think it was almost ready to launch, and that project's been put on hold. There are other projects that they were planning to use Soyuz boosters out of South America. And the Europeans are going to have to retool, and they're going to have to find, first of all, a new ride to space. They're working on their own right now. They're almost about to bring Ariane 6 online. And I think in the long run, they're losing a valuable partner, which is sort of unfortunate. But, at the same time, it will help them develop their own spaceflight capabilities even further than they have today.
So, Subrata, do you believe this space exploration should be above the politics, or is it in an area like trade that can be targeted when it comes to political differences between countries?
My own view is that the space is unique commons, and that there is really no easy way to separate out countries, especially two big space powers in the world, to not be cooperative. And given the situation with the debris on the low Earth orbit and things of that sort, that cooperation is essential. And I think that the scientists and people like Dr. Boyer who are close to this thing, it's absolutely important. I am a member of PAGWASH, which is an international association of scientists who work on disarmament. and that has been very successful in doing diplomacy on nuclear weapons to
Yes.
bring together scientists. Because as he speaks very clearly that the Russian and U.S. cosmonauts have worked very, very well. I mean, we just landed them in Kazakhstan, and the American astronaut and two Russian astronauts. So there is a lot of camaraderie amongst scientists, space scientists, nuclear scientists, and we must capitalize. So there is a great role for NASA scientists and Soviet space program, Russian space
Yes.
program, Chinese space program scientists to play a role to bring this together. And
So,
I think it's possible.
yeah, Charles, are you of the same view? And what do you make of NASA's position? It has so far managed to remain neutral, saying that it doesn't want to get involved into politics. But can it maintain this view?
I think so. I think that the ongoing operations, rather, in the International Space Station, they've remained collegial, they've remained professional, and they've kept the space station in good operation. Sometimes I wish that the politicians down here on Earth could get along as well as the astronauts in orbit do.
All right, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.